the scenario doesn't make a difference. It could be high pressure, it could be low pressure, big private ground, whatever the case may be. We're still going to be natural. We're not trying to sound like anything other than a real live deer.
If you don't believe in deer calling or you want to get better, this is the conversation for you. This is with JJ Dukart.
We always start subtle. I think the worst thing you could do is go out and just be real loud. Give them a little bit and just start working your way up and trying a few different communication methods. I think that's probably your highest chance.
And we break down all the common mistakes folks are making, whether to call, not to call, understanding the deer's body language, and the things that most people get wrong, including myself. I learned a lot in this conversation, so I hope you guys enjoy it. Two quick things before we get into this. The Whitetail Podcast is brought to you by Moultrie, and they just recently made an update in the app to where all the edge images in the Moultrie app are 4 times the quality. So basically, the images used to be smaller, now they're 4 times as big. And what does this mean? It means you don't have to burn your HD images on every potential big buck picture that you want to see more clear. So a huge update from them, and it makes noticeably a large difference. Number 2, the Mobile Hunters Expo is going to be happening this weekend, August 22nd to the 24th. There's a ton of different vendors, including some of the partners here at the podcast, like Hawk Optics. There's gonna be a bunch of different prizes that you can win, like cell camera sticks, saddles. There's gonna be milkweed there if you need some. I know some parts of the country it's a little harder to find, so you can go to the show and get a bunch of different free gear. On top of that, you can test mobile hunting gear and buy it all in the same spot. You wanna try a new saddle? Head there, try it out. Give it a chance. They have a lot of different guest speakers, including folks we've interviewed, like Bobby Worthington. If you want to go listen to him in person, maybe you had your own question that I didn't ask in the interview, you can head there and check out Bobby Worthington, Jared Mills, Jake Belinda, Pierce Moore. So if you're in the area, you want to go check out the Mobile Hunters Expo, August 22nd to the 24th in Wilmington, Ohio. Be sure to let them know that the podcast encouraged you to go to that. A lot of great vendors, no matter basically what you're looking for. So these in-person events I feel are great. So here we go. This is JJ. Listen to this, calling your first giant buck. Here we go. JJ, how's it going?
It's going great. Another busy day. Heading into season, pretty exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Excitement is building every single day, I think, for me and probably anyone listening to this. And so I want to dive into a lot of different things here today. But before we do all of that, I had bought the extinguisher, and man, it feels like a little bit of I gotta have it after I've used it and had success. But I'm just really kind of fascinated with how you guys got that started. And we were talking on the phone earlier this week. Like I listened to, I think it was Lindsay Way had a podcast like a long time ago, like 2018 or 2019. And it kind of talked about the story of the business, which I found pretty fascinating. But I don't expect everyone to have listened to that episode. So I would love to kind of hear like the Cliff Notes version of how all of this, started.
Yeah. So really, it's a family business, Illusion. My dad kicked it off. He was actually a waterfowl outfitter back in the day. So he guided for duck and goose hunting in Rochester, Minnesota. That's where we're located. So he was just guiding clients. I don't know if you've ever waterfowl or goose hunted much.
Not a ton. I've never gone on an outfitted hunt. I've duck hunted about this many times, and I've goose hunted a lot more though.
Yeah. So that's obviously a huge communication hunt versus other hunts, maybe not so much, but big communication hunt. You're calling to the geese, you're reading their body language, trying to get them in. In this situation, there's like heated pits where the clients come in, heated pits, everybody's hiding, you get your decoy setups, guides are calling to the geese, maybe you're flagging, you got, a lot of different factors, kind of like we do at the whitetail hunting, same thing with goose hunting. And then when the geese come in close, you flip the buzzer, makes a noise, everybody pops up, and then they take their shots. So that's how kind of just your basic guided goose hunt. Well, being a guide, you need to get the geese as close as possible because your clients may or may not be the best shot. You want to give them a higher chance, right? So communicating with the geese, trying to get them in real close, just trying to get that real personal, real close in action for your clients is how his goose business started, where he was making a lot of goose calls for Canadians, snow geese, specklebellies, which then shifted into duck calls, several different duck calls, mallards, teal diver duck call, just a bunch of different products in that category. And really it was all about communication. So back then he had communication systems where he would package every product with a VHS video showing here's the different language, here's the breakdowns, here's what this sound means, when you can use that, like kind of like we do now with the deer stuff and Deer Society and that education based around the calling. but it was all waterfowl back then. So he started there. Then he got into turkey, and I was, real young. I'm pretty old now. I'm 38 feel old, but grew up throughout this whole process and was involved in a lot of it. Got into turkey calls. We were making wood calls, friction calls, diaphragm calls, and I've tuned and tested, tons of those. But then the business slowly shifted into whitetail, and that's really where my passion was. I was just like all ate up with deer hunting, not so much duck, goose. I really liked it. I really love all kinds of hunting, pheasant hunting, duck, goose, turkey, love it all. But whitetail, there's just something special about it. So that's where my passion was. So when I got more involved with the business as I was older, the extinguisher deer call came about, and trying to create a deer calling system and the black rack and our products there. So
When did the first extinguisher hit the shelves? What year was that?
I don't even remember the year. It's been quite a while now. Couldn't even give a year. A decade ago.
Okay.
Decade ago.
So your family was making these other game calls. Was it just a natural progression of, hey, the whitetail market seems underserved, or were you like, Dad, please make a grunt call? I know you can make an awesome one. Please do it. How did that come to, how did it come to light?
Yeah, so he's told this story quite a bit where, we were out deer hunting and he tried to make a call to a buck and his call locked up, and it's cold in Minnesota. Get moisture in your call. It's sub-freezing temperatures. His call didn't work. It locked up. So then he's in his mind, he dreamt up this concept of having something break free that reed. That's where the slide system came into play. It was actually just to break it up a frozen reed. And then he started playing with it, with his kind of engineer mindset. It started making different sounds. Oh, that's kind of cool. Now we can make different sounds. This is more like the fawn range. And we kind of already understood how deer calls worked. And he was, I call him an expert at the reed system of designing reed calls. So now taking that into the deer space, which is a much more simple communication, whereas waterfowl and turkey, that's very extensive. It was basically just a very simple version of those types of systems. So brought that into the deer market. He designed the call, gave it to a bunch of real high-end hunters and professionals, and they were using it, and they were killing big bucks and 200-inch bucks. And Mike, this is the best thing. And I remember some of those prototypes were super rough. Like they had like a garden hose tube on the end cut up, and it was just taped together, and pretty crazy looking prototypes there for a while. But then we dialed it in. Then you bring that product into actual production, create a mold, and there's a whole process of that. But once we saw the success and these guys were shooting all these giant bucks, and we started, getting that input and feedback and making the call better, and finally brought it to market. That was kind of how it all worked out. But yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah,
Looking back, pretty cool.
It's interesting you bring up the complexity of calling, because there's like world champion goose caller, world champion duck caller, world champion turkey caller, and whitetail calls. There's like, is that a good thing because it's not that complicated? So people you can be good without decades of practice.
Right. Yeah. So, the call does most of it for you. There's a lot of things you can do with inflection and hand position and directional calling and stuff like that. And just using your mouth and diaphragm correctly to get a little bit better sound, but you can't mess it up like a goose call where you're just trying to make a cluck or a honk. And it's tough. It can be pretty tough. Or turkey hunting, if you're doing friction calls and diaphragm, those can be pretty tough.
Yeah.
The learning curve. So.
You guys should have a world champion whitetail calling competition, and you guys can sponsor it, and anyone can use any call. But that way people can say like, I'm the world champion whitetail caller. You give them a scenario of like, you're in this state at this time, and this is the demeanor of the deer. And maybe you have like with all the B-roll from Deer Society of like, you have it on a projector screen and like they're making. I feel like that'd be pretty cool. No one's done that.
Yeah, because they do it pretty much every other game besides deer. You got the elk calling, you got turkey where the guys are up there like
put on a show.
Crazy, they're flapping the wings. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you guys should do that. And that way someone could be a world champion deer caller. Yeah. I feel like that. There'll be someone practicing.
We'll start out with just like a very small contest, and then we'll just win it. We'll just have like
10 years running, we are the world champions of our own competition. No, that's funny. So I guess getting into the actual side of it, there's people that's, in the world of whitetails, everyone has their own approach, their own ideology, and it kind of solidifies, with their own success over the years. And for someone that says, I don't want to use a call, I don't want to rattle, I don't want the deer to know I'm there. What do you say to that guy?
Well, first off, I like the fact that everybody has a different style. Like I've interviewed so many people and worked with different people, video teams on Deer Society and listened to all these podcasts, part of podcasts. And there's the cool thing about deer hunting is so many people have different methods and they all shoot big bucks. So when someone says, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this, you have to do this, like just kind of throw that out the window because I've seen success in so many different ways, which you have too. So many different people do it different. So I just think it comes down to what's your strategy? Does it work for you? Because every hunting situation is different. Like, are you hunting the open plains? Are you hunting just big timber? Are you hunting mixed ag? What's the scenario? There's no real right answer. Most of what we do, we love communication. We feel like it's a huge tool. If you don't have your deer call and there's that deer right out of range, or your rattling system, if you can't communicate with them, just close that gap a little bit. Or if you don't even have that option, I feel like you're kind of naked out there. So that's our opinion. We feel like it's a very strong tool for what we do strategy wise. But like I said, there's so many different people that hunt different ways that they might not necessarily need communication to get the job done, whether it's habitat management where the food plot brings them right into the water hole, that might not make sense, especially early season. But if it is during the rut and those bucks are off the food, now they're back in the bedding and maybe communications more important in that type of hunt during that time of the season. So too many variables to say you should do this, you shouldn't do that. This is what we do. And we just try to provide as much information as possible. And then it's up to the hunter to just take that all in and use it to their advantage. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, I interviewed Bobby Worthington earlier this year, and I was like, "What do you think about rattling?" And he's a hilarious guy. And he's like, "Rattling's for guys that don't know how to set up." And I was like, there's probably some truth to that. Meaning, to your point of there's so many different ways to do it successfully, but there's people that use vocalization and calls that have a ton of success too, which I think is the fun part of this conversation, and the fact that you recognize that, like, it's not a silver bullet, it's not magic, but it is something else that you can utilize. Do you think that, well, I'll tell you this. When I bought my first extinguisher, I don't know what year this was, maybe like 2017, 2018. And I remember, like, you have a good hunt and I'm literally laying in bed watching your guys' tutorials before the next day of like, okay, what if this scenario? What if this scenario? And I really respect that you guys put out that information because there's a lot to it. And I feel like there's guys that are so much naturally better at understanding a deer's demeanor than other folks of like, hey, this is what I think this deer's in the mood to hear. Is that something that you think you could teach someone, or do you think that's just something from trial and error, or is there somewhere in between those two extremes?
I think maybe some people it's natural. I think you could relate it to how you can read a body language of a dog or something though. So if you're a pet owner and you can see, oh, my dog's upset or he's not feeling good or he's, whatever the case may be, I feel like deer have some of those same physical like attributes when they're trying to communicate too. So you could pick something off there. I know before I really started working with a lot of high-end hunters and gathering content and having just massive catalogs of video where I'm watching all this like raw footage, like I didn't really have a good idea of what deer were thinking, what they're doing. But then when you see all this footage, oh, he flicked his tail, this means that. He turned his head, this means that. Oh, his ears are actually pointed at you. He can hear you. He's listening to you, but he's kind of trying to ignore you or show, that he doesn't care. So there's all those things that you would never know if you didn't see that and experience that, or in my case, just be able to watch a bunch of footage from guys out in the field. So I think I shortened the learning curve in my case just by being involved with a lot of that footage in the Deer Society hunt breakdowns and all the content. But I think you could learn it out in the field better than you can. I guess just, not having that experience too. So I just experienced, but you could watch a bunch of videos, whether it's ours, whether it's somebody else, and you can pick that stuff off too.
Mm-hmm.
You can read the deer's body language just by watching a lot of hunts and trying to really see that raw footage and understand what's going on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel that makes sense, but I want to dive into, let's say someone's never called in a deer before. This is their first year hunting. They maybe have a grunt call, maybe they have a set of rattling antlers, and I want you to paint the ideal optimum scenario where you have high odds of potentially calling in a deer? So, I mean, you can pick the time of year, you can pick the paintbrush is in your hand. Paint us a picture of like the exact scenario as much detail as possible, because I feel like that would really help someone to understand. Because I think a lot of people, and I've been guilty of this, like you see your way off, and you're like, oh, it's a Hail Mary, and I think Hail Mary is synonymous with what a lot of people compare calling to, and it's like, is that the right approach or is that not? So I'll give you the paintbrush and let you take it from here.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's 100% probably if you're just calling in the most deer, that pre-rut time period around here, late October, a good cold front that time of the year when bucks are starting to get pretty frisky and they're expanding their zones, they're checking scrapes, they're looking for that first hot doe. They're most susceptible let's call it that week of the year, and you time it with a cold front where they're up on their feet, they're moving. They feel more comfortable moving because it's not hot, and all the barometric pressure and all the outside factors and stuff. So late October, maybe you're set up in the morning, or it's a late morning where tight to bedding, maybe downwind side of bedding, could be a big pinch close to bedding, but something relating to bedding and thick cover, because you want cover when you're communicating with deer, so they can't see exactly where the sound's coming from. So close to tight cover, good scent control, good wind or thermals, late October, cold front. And once you see a deer, he may be on a doe, but I don't think she'll be receptive quite yet in most cases. And you'll be able to call him off, or if he's just cruising or he's going from A to B, bedding to food. If you can catch him all by himself in that situation, and you start to just subtly call, whether it's just a little buck grunt, you kind of want to feel it out. It could be just a buck grunt, could be a little doe bleat. If he's not reacting to that, we kind of step it up on the ladder. We always start subtle. I think the worst thing you could do is go out and just be real loud. But if you can visually see, blind calling can work pretty good this time of the year too. But if you can visually see a buck, just give him a little bit and just start working your way up and trying a few different communication methods. I think that's probably your highest chance.
How far is the bubble when you start calling subtly? Like, let's say you're in a thick area and you catch a glimpse of him. He's 70 yards away.
He's well within the bubble. It depends on the wind. If you have, 15, 20 mile an hour winds, maybe you won't hear you as much. Crunchy leaves potentially, or frosty morning, that could impact how well he can hear you. But if he stops, if it's not too windy, anything under 100 yards, I think you're well within the bubble. Mm-hmm. The rattling, just like we use the black rack, it can reach substantially further, but that's not really that in close communication. That's probably more of just, this is one of the best times to rattle too, is that pre-rut, late October. Maybe he's 200 yards away, and maybe you just get a little attention with a little bit of sparring. I always start light. I'm not a big person that just hammers the black rack or, gets too aggressive. I start light, and we'll get him more aggressive as time goes on. I think you could easily pull him in for a couple 100 yards with rattling, 100 yards with calling. If you are going to rattle and try to pull him in within 100 yards, then you can move into the communication with the deer, call the extinguisher, start doing more subtle stuff. That's really that 100-yard in. Mm-hmm. Product would be more of the deer call. Mm-hmm. And then a couple 100 yards with rattling.
Mm-hmm. What about, let's do this scenario. You're sitting there, you weren't paying close enough attention, or maybe it's super thick and you can't see very far. And the deer you're going after is 45 yards away, semi-calm, 7 mile per hour winds. You have an area where your wind's going into a pond, a ditch, you have the wind set up, and he's close. Do you call in like a 40 to 45 yard bubble when he might be working past you, and it's like, man, this is probably my opportunity. He's going to disappear off the backside of this hill and I might not see him again. In that scenario, are you trying to still subtly call and just like very lightly, just so he hears it enough? Or what does that look like?
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of factors that go into what you're seeing deer react to for a type of call earlier in that day or earlier in that week. But I would try to call, and it also depends on how much cover you have. So if it's just wide open timber, even if you get the wind right and everything, you're going to call, but you're going to be there's a higher chance it won't work if you don't have a lot of good cover under you, mm-hmm. On the ground level, because you're always trying to call down, direct that sound down to the spot you want him to go when he's not looking at you. So maybe his head's down, he's kind of walking away, or he pauses and he looks and just stops. It's calm. He's looking away. That's a good time to just call, direct it to where you want him to go. Obviously not downwind, but upwind into a nice thick area where he can't see to where he has to come investigate. But if it's just wide open, big timber stuff, maple trees or pine tree, whatever the case may be, and he can see that 45 yards, I'm not saying he wouldn't commit because he's still probably curious, but the odds of him coming in without, be able to see there and not know there's a deer not there, it's just lower odds than if it's really thick and he's like, oh, there's something over there I can't see. I'm going to go investigate. So kind of just another variable there too. You want heavy cover. You want to direct your call to the spot you want him to go. He might circle downwind, but you got a good situation here with blowing it off into the pond or the creek. And that's probably your best situation. Yeah. So it kind of depends on what you want to do. Do you think he's looking for a doe? Are you going to do a little doe bleat? Is it more of an estrus bleat? Do you think just a little buck run? Is he kind of has the hair standing up? Is he kind of pissed off a little bit? That's the choice you got to make on what call to make.
Yeah. It's interesting you bring up calling down into the direction you want the deer to go, because as you said that, I'm thinking back of times I've called and I look like I'm playing a trumpet or something. I got pointed at the deer so they hear it. That's got to be one of the most common mistakes, because that's something that I'm just learning right now.
Yeah. So a lot of times, you see a deer, you call and you're trying to get his attention. So you call at him, and that can be okay when he's not looking at you or if his ears aren't, because they can pinpoint you pretty well. I don't think quite as well as like a turkey can. But a deer can pinpoint, oh, that was over toward that tree. And if you're blowing, especially if you're way up above him and you're blowing down, like it might sound like it's coming from up above. If you can direct that call down and kind of deflect that noise back at him from the ground, it won't sound quite the same. So he'll kind of be curious. Oh, that came from, that thicket over under that tree or to the right of that tree. And then when he looks, you just never want to call at him, because then they can really pinpoint where it came from. And they might see him move. They might see in the tree. So you just want to be patient. Like if he's looking, it might take 2, 3, 4, or 5 minutes where he's not moving. He's just looking. Just don't move. Don't make a noise. Maybe he starts to commit. Then obviously you don't need to call again. But if he starts to walk away or just turns his head to look away, then that'd be another chance to just hit him with one more call again, direct it down to that thick spot.
Would you say at the end of October is your most successful period of time for calling, throughout the whitetail calendar?
Yeah. I've called deer in pretty much throughout the whole season. You just call more deer in, especially rattling more deer during that time. It just really depends. Calling is just one little aspect of what we're doing. It's all about, because we're setting up stuff with food sources and bedding and travel corridors and stuff too, pinch points. So it's not always about setting up for the calling. It's just a tool that you have for the situation if you need it. Some scenarios you are setting up for calling.
What would be a scenario like that?
So if you're setting up this time of the year, and you could just be looking over like a big open, maybe it's like an old cattle pasture with a bunch of cedars and scrubs and shrubs, and you just see deer cruising through like that, and you can watch that during the day. Maybe that's a midday setup during the rut, and that could be even during peak rut, post rut, November. Just watching them cruise through that gap, catching glimpses and trying to call them. Because it's more wide open. You're not pinching them down right in front of you. It's big, expansive. You're on the downwind side of most travel corridors, but it's not like everything's pinching within 20 yards like you'd be, maybe some other spot.
What would you say to someone that's hunting, and I'll try to keep it somewhat regional so it's applicable, but a guy that's hunting on public ground in Pennsylvania, New York, somewhere out east, they're not able to set up a food source, but they still want to utilize these calling systems. I have to imagine you guys have had customer success stories over the years where they're like, I hunt Pennsylvania public and I called in this deer, or I rattled in this deer, because I think there's this common thing where they're like, oh, that wouldn't work. That wouldn't work where I hunt. It's too much pressure. That wouldn't work. Is that a fallacy based off what you've seen over the years?
Well, I think there's a lot of different factors. I think a lot of people probably call and educate deer, which does not help the person that understands communication is trying to call a deer, because now they're hearing a lot more calling and maybe won't react to it quite as well. the thing that we tell everybody, no matter where you are, is you need to sound exactly like a deer. So that's why our calling system, most people think it's probably too quiet. They want it real loud, aggressive. And it's like, well, you really want it to be natural. You want it to be like you're blending right in to the landscape. You're just like any other deer. It's not a call. You become a deer. So if you're hunting high pressure stuff, a lot of guys are having success. We get tons of photos and testimonials and stuff all the time from all across the country in situations like you just talked about. I think the most common thing there is you got to be supernatural. I don't think, a lot of big blind rattling would be a situation you'd want to do there. But if you're well within the bubble, you're real tight to bedding. You get inside that 100 yards of a mature buck, and you're saying the right thing in the right scenario and the right volume naturally. I mean, you're not going to spook them.
Mm-hmm.
So then that's the best chance you're going to have in that type of high pressure scenario. You just want to get in real tight, try to read his body language, which will be the most difficult part. Say the right thing, and it'll just be so natural that it's just like any other day for him. He's like, oh, there's another buck over there. It sounds exactly like a buck. It's very close. I want to check that out, and just entice him to close the gap. So you just got to be a lot more natural.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. So if I want to sound natural, why should I use the black rack versus a set of antlers?
Well, the black rack's just there's a bunch of different stuff there.
I'm just poking at you too, by the way.
Personally, I can get better sounds out of the black rack. I've been using it for a long time, so there is some technique to it. I can do a lot more light sparring. I can get a lot louder, and I can just do a lot more natural stuff with the black rack versus shed antlers. Shed antlers sound pretty good. They do have their own unique sound, but they don't sound like a fight. They sound pretty good, I think, for sparring. I don't think they sound quite as good for the big fight. That's just my opinion. There's a little bit less time contact. I think they sound good as far as the tone, but you can't create that two full rack leverage with the sheds versus the black rack.
Mm-hmm.
But I think both can work. I think it comes down to the buck's mindset. I think it comes down to the skill set you have with rattling. I think different people, I hear they can sound completely different from different people. I've heard hunters in the woods and you can tell what they're using by the sound, and it doesn't sound good sometimes.
What do you mean by that? Too loud? Too like?
Just this, I've had a scenario where I'm hunting just a little permission piece. It's 30 acres, and a guy's in the next woods over, and it was like every 10 minutes, just you gotta paint the picture. So what are you trying to create? It's not just a bunch of noise. It's not just a bunch of tines bouncing around. It's like, maybe it's just a smash. Maybe it's just one big clash, maybe it's light sparring, but just do it at the right time. That last half hour light, that last hour light by a food source, get some bucks out, just a little light sparring. Like what's naturally happening. You don't hear bucks fighting from the same location every 10, 15 minutes the entire day. Like that's not, especially when you start in the evening and there's 3-4 hours of light left and you've already done, multiple rattling sequences. It's getting closer to dark and you've done 10 sequences. Like anything bedding anywhere close, it's just not a good situation. You got to keep it natural. That's the thing. Regardless of what you're using, you got to keep it natural. You got to try it out, experiment a little bit. Go outside your house and just play around a little bit. Try to get those sounds. Try to get that fighting. Try to get it right before you go to the field. Don't just, go out there and bang them around. Just try to think it through a little bit more. But you just got to be natural. It's all about natural.
So if anyone remembers anything, be natural, be a deer. What do you say to people that say typically, I've rattled in 2-year-old bucks, 3-year-old bucks, but man, I've never rattled in like a true mature deer. I feel like calling's a little bit different, but is that something you've heard over the years? I mean, at trade shows or emails, like, hey, I've rattled, and I'm just saying rattling in general, and I just have never rattled in a mature buck. How do you rattle in mature bucks throughout multiple times throughout the year?
Yeah, when I'm hunting a mature buck, again, I'm gonna say natural, but I'm pretty low key. I'm very low key. It's again, I stick more to light sparring, real light call. Like I called my buck in a few years ago. We call him Skyscraper. Pretty good hunt breakdown. That was a vocal communication, but I was close to bedding, super light calling. I was probably 60, 70 yards from where he's bedded probably. I don't know exact bedding spot he was in,
Sure.
but called him out that evening. It was just such light communication, just some light doe bleats, some little buck runs, contact runs. I could have easily taken the black rack that night and just done a little bit of sparring. I didn't. I think that would have just kind of added to that picture. A couple light little young bucks sparring, chasing the doe. It's November, get them out. So that'd be a rattle. You'd rattle them in that scenario too. Rattled in a mature buck early season. And this is probably almost 8 years ago now. I think it was 2017. So early season, again, light sparring. This was like October 5th or 4th or 3rd. It was one of the first days in October. He came in, he was going the opposite direction, put the black rack behind my back and just tried to do directional rattling behind me because the food source was behind me. He was going to some apple trees on the neighbors. Kind of a last ditch effort. I did some light sparring facing back to the plot behind me. And then he came in. I didn't really see him the whole time. He disappeared for a while. Then he circled in. I had the wind in my favor in this situation. He circled in downwind in front of me, and then I shot him at like 24 yards. So that's early season rattling in a mature buck. So yeah, I think again, natural.
Yeah. Well, I think most people, man, this is just me. I've never brought rattling antlers into the woods before October 27th, ever. Like hearing that story, I'm like, dang, I probably should, or it's something I should definitely consider. Do you bring your grunt call and rattling antlers basically every single hunt?
Maybe. Pretty much. The only time I don't have and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, like the only time I don't really rattle would be late season, like
sure.
Food source. Like they're not really coming into a rattling situation there. You could maybe do a little light sparring and stuff and calling by the food to get them up early to kind of investigate. But like, man, that's tough late season. Everything's so loud. It's crunchy. It's hard to get in. It's just, they're not really reacting to that. Like they're just hungry. Early season's a little bit different because they're going to food, but they're also trying to kind of set that dominance factor up. So even now, like I'm seeing was out last couple nights, just glassing, seeing bucks. You can tell which ones are trying to push the other ones off. They still have velvet, so they're not fighting. Sure. But they're trying to establish that dominance. We've seen a couple. We were talking in the office here yesterday. Like we've been seeing certain mature bucks that were pretty active in spots that are now gone because a different mature buck moved in. So they're starting to like shift around a little bit. A lot of times what we see early season after they shed their velvet, there's just so much sparring out there. Mm-hmm. Like even the little bucks, they're walking up to each other, they're sparring. They'll walk up to a big buck and kind of sniff him a little bit. And he doesn't want to do much, but every once in a while he kind of put his head down and shove him off, or he'll let him kind of tickle onto one of his antlers for a little bit. And those are just that's rattling, right?
Yeah.
But it's sparring, it's early season. They're not just hammering each other out there.
Yeah. I'm going to paint another picture for you that I think probably everyone could relate to at some period of their hunting over the years. Pick anywhere between November 6th and the 10th. You're in the Midwest, or really you're anywhere in the northern half of the United States. You're set up in the hardwoods. You see a buck, a ridge over, he's 150 yards away. It's pretty open. Maybe there's some pockets where it's a little bit more thick. And that deer is on a mission. It's, we've all seen it where it's like that deer knows where he's going. What is your level of success with interjection to try to get him within bow range in that type of scenario? And you can elaborate on this scenario at all, but I just wanted to paint a broad picture that I think everyone can relate to at some point. They're like, oh, there he is. He's probably not going to come by. What could I do?
Yeah, so I called my buck in last year, but it was the first week in November. So you're just past this. And where we're at in Minnesota, Wisconsin, I start to get a little bit more concerned because we're heading into that, people call it lockdown, peak rut, where they start locking on does. And then it's tough. Like if this buck's by himself, you're in pretty good odds because he's looking for a doe and he's looking hard. So if you can paint the picture, I'd probably just go right for doe right there. Could do a buck run just to, catch his attention, just a little contact run so he stops. Then I'd start putting down some doe bleats because that's what he's looking for right now. If he's on a doe, this time period you're talking about, or the week after, that's tough because you're competing with a live doe. We actually had a podcast with been rising here a couple weeks ago that was pretty interesting, where he's trying to actually call does in that time of the year to pull the buck in.
Mm-hmm.
And he's trying to give the does, and he actually shot a buck last year. That was a perfect example of it. And it was kind of how my hunt went down, but his buck was on a doe, on a hot doe. He's like right in the money. This buck came in, great footage, on a hot doe. There was a couple different does. He was doe bleeding and calling that doe in and trying to, replicate like other situations of does and bucks to try to bring her in. So this doe could get that buck off of her because she was just panting and she was getting harassed, and like, what the situation is during the peak rut. And what he said was, you call it like relief. You're trying to give the doe relief. She's trying to get into another group of deer, kind of lose the buck.
Yeah.
Like he's harassing her, get that doe in, and the buck's going to follow. And that worked out for him. I kind of did that last year. Again, before the window you're talking about, it was the first week in November, but a doe came through. She was really vocal. I filmed it. This will be a hunt breakdown coming out where she's bleeding. I saw her 2 days in a row. The same doe was bleeding out there first week in November. So I knew it was the same one, like same spot. And then she went back in toward the swamp, and then I heard the buck. Like she must have bumped the buck, and then he got up, and it was just all kinds of clicking and croaking and like 10 minutes of just chaos back there. They started slowly working. I was doing some doe bleats. She worked back my direction. She got to 15 yards. He followed. He was behind me 10 yards, just croaking, clicking, doing all kinds of long vocalizations. Pretty crazy hunt. Got me super fired up, and I ended up shooting him there. But yeah, if he's by himself that time of the year, you're in good shape. And I would just start out with, it's always pretty much climb the ladder. Like I said earlier, a contact grunt, just get his attention. I wouldn't start doing like breeding grunts for does yet. Or for bucks, but I'd start doing like a little doe bleat, a little estrus bleat, which is just a little bit longer doe bleat. And then just see how he reacts, if he commits. And if you got to get aggressive, some people, like their favorite thing in the world is they only want to snort wheeze at bucks. I don't have a lot of success with that, but some people, I see the footage.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like they hit them with a snort wheeze and they just turn and come in. I have not had as much success. Maybe you have. But that's
I've tried it. I've tried it many times because to your point, like subconsciously climbing the ladder where you try, contact grunt, and you just kind of, and you're like, dang, he doesn't care about any of this stuff. So I'm going to try that. And I've talked to people too that, swear by it. And just a bag of tricks, man. That's I think, because, a lot of guys, they hunt the whole year and maybe they have 2 encounters with a mature buck all year or 3 encounters with a mature buck all year. Just a guy that's working on the weekends or works during the week, hunts on the weekends. And I feel that it's hard to get those reps to really be able to read the scenario properly and do the grunts, do the calls, maybe not call at all if you think that's the right call. No pun intended. I mean, it's so challenging, I think, for a lot of people to, hear what you're discussing and then be able to hop into your brain or hop into your shoes and read the situation properly to have success. I feel like that's hard. So, I mean, with that being said, if you had to come up with just like, these are the 3 sins of calling deer that you just don't do. Like if you learned that at some point, throw it out, never do it again. Obviously, sounding natural is one of them, and probably not aggressively blind calling. Is there anything else that jumps, right out to you?
Well, I think there's one, and you just hit it. It happened last year. So my dad shot this buck, and again, it's going to be a deer society hunt breakdown. It'll be one of our first ones, a buck called Patches, double throat patch buck, really cool deer. We had him aged at 5 based on sheds. We found like 4 years of sheds. The teeth came back at 6, so that was kind of interesting. But we were hunting that deer, me, my dad, and my brother. We hunt together because you have to kind of collaborate on your efforts and strategize together. You can't fight each other. Nobody's going to be successful, right? So we're hunting kind of the same strategy. I was hunting one day. This buck came in at 10 yards fast. It was windy. Caught him out of the corner of my eye. Went through the shooting lane way too quick. I tried to get the camera set up and stuff, which is another factor. But he started walking away. And at that, he was 25 yards. Walking straight away back into the bedding. And I just didn't even call. And at that point, I'm like, I'm not going to educate him. He's not coming my way. He's going the opposite direction. I don't feel like there's something I can say right now this early in the season that's going to entice him. He's been patterned in this area pretty well. I'm not going to mess it up. So I just slipped back out that night. My dad ended up shooting him a couple weeks later in the same stand. So I didn't mess it up, right? If I would have started calling, he picked up on me, things didn't work. I mean, there were not a lot of shooting lanes where he went. It just wasn't a scenario to call. So sometimes you got to just be smart and not even call. Like, don't educate a deer if you think you got another shot at him coming up in the next days or weeks too. So I think that's another key factor is be natural. Like you said, don't be overly aggressive to start, climb that ladder. And then if the situation's not perfect, if it's not right, maybe you're running out of light. Like if you got 5 minutes left of legal light and the buck's out, like why have them come in when it's dark, And then you're going to get locked in, or you're going to have does in tight. And so being able to get in and out clean not only allows that stand to be more successful for future hunts, but if you're not educating the deer, then you can still have that bag of tricks for communication, the next time you see the buck in that spot.
Have you, throughout your hunting over the years, did you ever just practice on deer? Like maybe it's a buck that maybe he's just like, man, he's not on the hit list. And I just like, you had to do that because I do that every year, which is probably dumb, but it's like, how else am I going to learn?
Yeah, I do that. And I also know that probably depends on the spot. Like if I know I'm going to be hunting this deer in the future years, I'm not going to mess with him too much because I already anticipate neighbors are probably calling at him or something else is going on. Because I know a lot of our neighbors they like the products and they see our videos and they're trying all the tactics too. So now we got to think, well, what's different than what our tactics were because the neighbors tried our tactics and now we got to try something new. So it's like a constant evolution. But I mostly call to try to get him in to just get a look, like what is this deer? How old is he? How's he reacting? Like, just get a good look, get some good footage. And then I just leave it alone and just kind of don't mess with him. Or if I get some good footage without calling, I'm just not going to call to him. You could pull some intel from that. Like if you're hunting a spot, maybe it's some public land and you just get out there and you see a 2-3-year-old buck and you're not going to shoot it, but you want a 4-year-old buck. You could just try some communication to see what they're reacting to. Like, oh, he didn't like the buck grunt, but he liked the doe bleat and he came right in. Okay, next time a shooter comes, I'm going to go doe bleat first. So you could use that to your advantage there. Or did he respond to rattling? Yes or no? Use that for future hunts, future days, future encounters. But for the most part, I feel like in general, if most people just kind of left the younger deer alone, didn't call to them too much, their communication success with those same deer in a couple of years down the road is going to be much higher.
What would you say to people that basically think that, hey, calls they don't work. They educate deer and they don't work. I refuse to do it. I mean, is that we kind of led the conversation with that, but I just want to revisit it because I feel that, you guys sell these, right? So of course, if you're like, hey, calls really don't work. And, like obviously it wouldn't make sense. So the root of it is like, do you think that everyone should have a grunt call in their pack throughout the season? Like that's how firmly, remove that you guys, built this business, you would still have a grunt call with you every single time you went in the woods.
Yeah, I would. And it's just, I think we look at it a lot more different. I keep using this word natural, but we just call so much more natural than the general population because of our experience and designing the calls and knowing how they work and knowing all those vocalizations that the scenario doesn't make a difference. It could be high pressure. It could be low pressure, big private ground, whatever the case may be. We're still going to be natural. We're not trying to sound like anything other than a real live deer because we don't want to spook a deer. So I think it's just a tool that it's going to work better. 100%, it's going to work better in certain situations, in certain states, in certain, areas than others. Like you can go to Kansas, for example, and just rattle in bucks and call in bucks, and they just seem to be more receptive. And I would say where we hunt, we're probably in the middle ground where it can work well. Sometimes it doesn't work that well. And then there's probably areas that are, super high pressure where there's probably a guy in every 10 acres hunting, where it might not work very well at all, but you're going to want to stay supernatural regardless of the situation or the state or the public or private or whatever you're hunting, to just give yourself the best chance. So it's just a tool. We believe it's the best tool out there for communicating and having every vocalization kind of at the tip of your finger with the slide on the system. And just having as many tools, communication or I mean, scent control, wind checker, knowing where the wind's like, they're all just tools, right? Your
Yeah.
bow's a tool, your camera's a tool. You got to use them right. I know I use trail cameras way different than other people.
I want to talk about that then. Yeah. How do you use trail cameras? Because I was just about to ask if you couldn't use trail cameras or you couldn't call, which one? Let me lead with this and I'll ask you how you do trail cameras differently.
That's
Okay,
pretty
JJ,
trail camera's
I,
a powerful
I,
tool.
I have a superpower and you can't hunt this year unless you answer this question. I am taking away your trail cameras or your calls. Which would you like to keep?
I think I'd be more successful with cameras, and I think I would have more fun with calls.
Oh, so which one is it? So are you choosing success or fun?
I'd probably choose success.
Okay, fair. Okay, all right. So you're keeping your
The
cameras.
biggest thing with us, we're trying to shoot mature deer, and it's so hard to find them. Like I've been glassing the last couple nights. Trail cameras find mature bucks. That is the first thing on shooting a mature buck is finding a mature buck. I mean, it's obviously everybody knows it's a complete industry changing technology.
Yeah.
Whereas calling is a tool you need while you're hunting.
Fair.
So,
Okay. I follow that logic. That's fair. So how do you feel like you use trail cameras differently? I'm really interested to hear this.
yeah, my mindset when I said that was very, very cautious of entering an area and the scent impacting the area. So even when I'm putting out a trail camera, I'm airing these things out for like weeks. There cannot be scent on these cameras when they go to the field. I think too many people are putting brand new cameras out right out of the box, or
Yeah.
um,
I did that yesterday.
yeah, this time of year, I mean, you have to, right?
Yeah.
Like you're getting your camera, and there's time for those cameras to sit. It's going to rain on them. It's not the middle of the season.
Mhm.
Um, but cameras and stands, like I try to just never touch them as much as possible.
Mhm.
That's where cell cameras come into play.
So are you taking, because I've thought of this many times and I do typically take the camera, like if it gets closer to season, I have some extra cameras that I'm going to deploy. I probably have one in my pack in case I find something of interest, and I'll hang the straps outside for a long period of time, because if you take a strap out of a box,
Yeah.
you smell it and it smells like human manufacturing plastic. And so you're like almost letting these cameras soak outside, and then you're just very cautious when you put them out, because I'm guessing we would agree with this. My favorite thing is when someone says, I put out a camera and the first picture I got was the buck I was after. And he's like nose face into it. It's like, that's cool and exciting, but I don't think the result of what happened is going to be as positive as what you think it
Right.
is.
Yeah, you got the information that he's there, but then like he also knows you're there or
Yeah.
something's there that's not natural. So yeah, I was just thinking about that. I was gonna say that same thing. I got a buddy, check out this buck at the big, it's like awesome video, but he just smelled the camera. And I'm like, well, it's still August, so I guess that's okay, but
Yeah.
not ideal.
Would you say, because there's a lot of people, I mean, the hunting strategies and styles, they naturally progress. You could look back at like some different popular strategies, and something now that I feel that is a lot more common than even what it was 10 years ago is 10 years ago, everyone had scent lock. Everyone was very, very cautious of their scent. People went vegetarian. They didn't want to even eat meat during deer season. And then now it is shifted to, I got my milkweed and I'm just going to set up where my wind's good. And you still seem like you're very scent conscious. So you are now a minority in this category, where 10 years ago you would have been along with the pack. Why have you not faltered to this new trend?
It just won't work for me in every situation. So I always have deer that go downwind. Like a very low percentage of my stands are just 100% bulletproof.
Hmm.
Especially the more aggressive you get, like deer are going to be downwind. So my scent control, that's probably one thing that I do quite a bit different than most people. I think I'm kind of a nut. Um, Everything's sitting out. I mean, camera arms, my boots. I've talked about it before to other people. Like I've put boots. I try to wash them as much as possible. We got a scent control product line called Phase. Encapsulates the odor, removes the odor permanently. Then we also work on dander control. So ours is moisturizing, where we got lotions. We're trying to seal off that dander, that dry skin. That's a big deal. But I mean, my stuff's airing out all the time. I joked the other day because I have some hemp ropes that I make scrapes with. And they've been outside for 2 years just hanging. I'm like, "Yep, they're about ready."
Yeah, that's pretty
Those ones are
intense.
ready.
Yeah.
But I've like I've taken binoculars and boots and rubber items and put them in the freezer to try to break through that like rubber, like try to degas some of that new stuff because it's just, I mean, there's some pairs of boots that I will not use in year one for a hunting situation because you just can't get it out of the boot. You got to hike, you got to go through water, go through snow, ice, like just use them for a year, bust
Mhm.
all that stuff off the outside, still clean them, use the face stuff, hang them upside down, or I actually put them on a big stake so they're elevated off the ground and the rain can just fall on top and they don't get wet on the inside. We used to make a product called an odor sponge. You'd put in the boot silica beads where it would just
Mhm.
absorb all that moisture and odor. So just a super clean boot. Back of my truck's clean, so they go right in the back of the truck. They come out when I'm done hunting. Just totally a freak. But I look at my hunts last year, for example, like the buck I called in, we're calling him Clicker because he was just clicking for 10 minutes on camera. It's really cool. He was downwind of me, directly downwind of me for probably 10 minutes. The doe was out in front of me, but he circled downwind of me. I'm doing all this crazy scent control stuff with the phase and airing it all out. And um, my wind was actually blowing into the bedding area that night, but it was just off like 10 degrees. And I have very good scent control where I feel good about that. But I still wanted him to not come in downwind. Like I still was playing like like a parallel wind, but he ended up circling directly downwind. And I look over my right shoulder, I ended up shooting him on my left, came from my left. Look over my right, wind's in my face. I can just see his nose or his like patches and his white nose back there just up in the air. He's clicking. So that's part of it. And he's making all these vocalizations, lip curling, doing all that crazy stuff. But I'm pretty sure he's like, I think I kind of smell something up there. But typically with our system, they're not smelling the person. They're smelling like maybe it's a little bit of chemical, maybe it's a little bit of rubber, and they don't get alarmed. Like they're not busting out. And then, he eventually comes in, circles, he gets to 5 yards, like right under my tree, ended up shooting him. So if I really stunk and said, no, I don't even care, that hunt was gone, was completely blown up.
Mhm.
100%. Like there's just no chance. So it's like, yeah, I could still play. So I can't hunt that stand unless I have a wind that's perfect for it, right? In the other situation, like I would just blow the deer out of that bedding area.
Mhm.
I would have spooked him. So that doesn't work. And then I got to try to figure out where I would hunt where the wind works in that situation. Not many spots.
Yeah. That's I feel I mean I yeah, it's interesting because I feel that most people fall on one end of the spectrum where they're very, very, very conscious and go through it. It's a ton of effort. What you just described is a lot more effort than what most people are willing to do. And so, I think that's probably a part of it. And then you kind of, if you halfway dip your toe into it, you're probably not going to have, the success where it's like humans stink. And we have all sorts of fragrances and you're around stuff all the time. But then like, I'm sure there's been a comment on your guys' channel before. You can't trick a deer's nose. And so what you're saying is, yeah, I would probably agree with that, but my window of opportunity does increase. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, I've seen it both ways where I've been busted. Like it's not like I don't get busted, but when my game is on and I know it's a low moisture situation, more so when it dries out during the rut, I feel
Yeah.
very good. Like a lot of deer can get downwind of me and I don't get busted. Early season's tougher because there's more moisture in the air,
Hmm.
um, just more humidity, and it seems like they do pick up on you. So we're always playing the wind. Like we're always playing the right wind. Sometimes in this scenario, it's during the rut. We're going to do a quartering. We're going to give them a little bit more, but we're still not going to just like, hey, all my trails are just full of scent. We're not going to do that. Best case scenario, it's the opposite, where all the scent is blowing off of a ridge or something where no deer can smell you. But there's all those situations in between where deer are going to be on all sides of you,
Hmm.
and we're going to do our very, very best to not get scented. So, um, we could go forever on scent control.
Most people don't have the effort to do it. I mean, growing up, I would try a lot more. Admittedly, I do less and less scent control, which does 100% limit some of my stand locations. Because I'm looking for the creek, I'm looking for the pond, I'm looking for the ditch, I'm looking, like you do limit your setups. I would 100% acknowledge that. Now, here's another ultimatum for you. All right, JJ, you can do no scent control. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to douse you with perfume, but you can't do any scent control or no trail cameras.
I still want to get the intel.
I love that. Yeah.
Trail cameras are really the number one tool right now.
Yeah. I mean, they're
a hunt. And I would just have to change my strategy if I'm just going to have to limit where I can hunt. A lot of scent control too is ground scent though. So that worries me with, so am I wearing like my day shoes, my
you can wear some hiking boots or hiking boots, but you can't be spraying them all the time. You do have to pump gas with them every now and then too. That's part of the rule too.
Yeah, that's tough. My method is just so much. That would be very hard for me. I like to have my trails just squeaky clean. I'm mowing trails.
So are you mowing? So you're mowing your access trails. I mean, I think that's interesting to hear. Like when you say squeaky clean, what does that look like?
In an ideal scenario, it's a mowed trail, which you do prior to the season. You don't need to, do it during the season. Some of the places I hunt that are more closer to residential, these landowners might already have trails that they're walking on, that they're mowing, that they're just maintaining. Those are perfect. 4-wheeler trails, logging road trails, or walking a creek edge, something where there's just not a lot of grass. Grass is just the worst. Tall grass wiping on you, sticks and branches, just they're collecting all of your scent. So really it's just about the shorter the grass, let's say it's a mowed trail, the shorter the grass is, the better. In the timber stuff, I'll rake out my trails going right to the tree. Right before a big rainstorm early in the season, I'll just rake all those leaves out, all the big branches, make sure they're nice and clean, and then I don't touch them. And I just hope, a tree didn't fall from storm before I go hunt. Getting my setups just so they're just dialed to where I know I can walk in the dark. I don't even use a light. Like I know I hit this certain branch and this certain, I'll put like a branch down so I know where to turn. It's like an arrow. It's like a little map on the ground. Walking in there, okay, I turn left here, and just little landmarks on the way in. But this trail is just bare dirt. So you're walking in on maybe I'll give a perfect scenario on one of my favorite spots. You can walk in along the edge of an ag field, which does not have the long grass kind of touching you and stuff. Make sure that's nice and clean. Once I hit the timber, that trail is marked and clean to the stand to where there's no leaves and sticks, and I can just walk it. And the wind's perfect. Like the wind, the elevation topography, like there's plenty of cover and I can just get right in, wind in my favor. I hunt. Everything out in front of me is upwind. And then when I'm done hunting, I just get straight down, walk that trail right back out. And it's like I was never there. It's an invisible situation. Deer can get downwind of me. They can cut that track. But again, with my scent control regiment, I don't worry too much about that. Especially if the wind speed is, above 5. It's not swirling. Like it's a good straight wind. Maybe a drier day, like I feel perfectly good.
Yeah.
That's squeaky clean.
That is squeaky clean. Do you notice when you do your raking, do deer end up using that trail, or how wide are you raking it out? And then
it's literally the size of a deer trail, and it doesn't go anywhere. It just goes right to my stand. It's not, and I'm usually perpendicular to their travel. So let's say there's bedding to my left, food to my right. I'm in that transition. My trail's a perpendicular cut into that. So they're not really needing to cut my trail and go follow it. It doesn't lead them anywhere. They should be walking in front of me, and maybe you block off the end. Like maybe when you get to your stand, it's just a bunch of brush and blocked off, and it's kind of just like a dead end road.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Well, is there, as far as cameras, I feel it's very clear that the intel is key. Has there been a point, and I feel that a lot of people maybe use them too much as a crutch? I mean, as far as like, I can't hunt the spot because I haven't had a picture of them yet, and I'm waiting to get a picture. When you're using cameras throughout the season, what are you trying to key in on, or maybe what's something subtle that you pick up on that maybe other people wouldn't consider?
I think a lot of people consider it, but I think the video mode of a cell camera or trail camera is huge to try to see how they're entering the area, exiting the area, how they're reacting and interacting with other deer. You might think, oh, this buck's the most mature buck. And then you get the video and it's like, oh, he got pushed off by this buck. And this one's the most mature. We're always targeting the most mature, not necessarily the most high scoring for the most part. And just you can learn so much information, what they're doing when they enter that camera. Are they drinking the water? Did they come in for that scrape? Or are they here for the food? Like what's the purpose of what they're here for? Did they come in just dog a doe and, head out? Is their nose on the ground? How aggressive do they look? So many different things you can pick up from a video that it's crucial. It's like you're there you're basically there watching the scenario of the hunt.
Yeah. Do you use external power sources for your cell cameras if you're running them on video?
I do. When I can. Obviously there's an expense to that, so they don't all have that. When a camera is not accessible, when I don't want to access that area and walk a trail, cut a trail, walk in there, I'm going to put a solar panel up. I use the lithium battery packs and just try to hope for the best. I will time it though. Like if I have to go in there, it's going to be a super windy day. I'm going to have all my scent control stuff on. Like I'm scent control. I'm basically hunting, but I'm checking the camera, right?
Yeah.
So I'm walking in that certain path. The wind's in my favor. It's super windy or there's a big storm blowing in with heavy rain. Like that's the day. That's the day to trim your stands if you need to. Shooting lanes, that's the day to check your cameras. Do any kind of modification, like that's the day. So I do pick windows to get into some of those hard to reach spots. Otherwise, if it's at an edge where maybe you can drive up middle of the day, like on a ag field or something, or a trail, or walk or drive to a certain extent, then walk, rubber boots, clean boots. I'll do that. So just every scenario is a little bit different.
Out of all the Deer Society guys, how do you rank on the level of being particular? Because you seem very, very, very particular. Like, is anyone like maybe more particular, like when it comes to scent control and like all these different things that we've talked about here today? Is there someone more particular than you? And then I want to know who is the least particular as well. Like, why do you do all that? You don't have to do that. There's got to be a guy like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know how all their strategies work. I see their hunts. There's certain guys here that are core, like they're in the office, the illusion guys, the video production. We work with Almanac Production. They film as part of Deer Society. I know all of our strategies pretty well. Some guys are super aggressive and hunt a different style than I do for sure. Other guys are kind of similar. I would say I'm kind of the most scent control freak. I'm pretty anal about it.
Yeah.
My dad's actually he's actually very, very good on scent control too, though.
And you said you have another brother that hunts that farm too?
I have another brother. Yeah, I have just one brother. Yeah, Chris. So he shot a buck last year. I filmed that one. That'll be a hunt breakdown later in the season. A really good buck. We were actually doe hunting, and shooter showed up. So we made the most of it.
When your brother hunts a stand because you said you guys all work together, which I think is great. Are you like, man, I'm bummed he's hunting that because he's gonna stink it up? Do you tell him that?
He's actually really good too.
Okay. Right.
We're all pretty much on this, or we'll give each other crap. Like, dude, you gotta square your stuff away here, and But it's all the same strategy where it's access and the wind direct. We're texting each other. Where are you gonna hunt? This is a great spot for this wind. You could hunt here, 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 but the intel's good here. Like we're all on the same page for sure. Especially on our home farm, which we got about 5 years ago. That's the first time we ever had a property that we owned. But I still do a lot of permission stuff and enjoy that because there's only so many mature bucks. Like we can't all three go out there and but we get one buck in Minnesota in our zone. Like there's not three mature bucks. So we're dancing around trying to figure out, what makes sense. And we're pretty good at working together.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, I'll say this. I think Deer Society has probably some of the most iconic whitetail hunts on YouTube if you go through your guys' catalog and archive. But if someone wanted to follow along with what you guys have going on, you mentioned some hunt breakdowns that are coming out in the future. Feel free to share that. And I'll be toting my extinguisher throughout the season again. I feel like I got a refresher and some key information that you'll be in the back of my mind when I see a mature buck and like, okay, what would JJ do? And hopefully I call him in.
Yeah. So that's all good. Deer Society, you can find YouTube, Instagram, all the social media channels. You can find Deer Society, but the hunt breakdowns will be on YouTube. We also have a series called The Art of Deer Hunting, which we'll do a lot of communication breakdowns as well. Like this one's all about buck communication. This one's all about rattling. This one's, it could be outside of communication too. We do a lot of stuff with scent control and food plots and habitat and, maybe it's mapping. So just a lot of detailed topics on that Art of Deer Hunting series that'll be on YouTube as well. We launched that last fall. Blogs, we have a podcast. So it's just more of a update podcast. It's not the format where you have a lot of guests on here.
Yep.
We're pretty much like, what are we seeing right now? What are we doing right now? What's our strategy? What could you be doing this time of the year? It's more just updated time of the year from our take. So a little different take there, but hunt breakdowns are probably the most watched by far content on the deer side of YouTube.
I think it's a great educational tool for people to really understand the full gambit, because I think that's sometimes a shortcoming of podcasts where you hear a story, but it's hard to visualize for the person. When you say thick, that might be different than my definition of thick and like all these different things. So I think that's a really cool thing that you guys do.
Yeah, and the cool thing is we work with teams across the country. So we're going to have hunts. Obviously, we're based in Minnesota, do a lot of Wisconsin, but we, there's guys that are some North Dakota, Montana public land stuff, some, Ohio, or even some down south hunts. So just mixing it up because strategies are different all over the country, and just how is this person successful here? Here's the breakdown, high level. Show a map, show how they access, where they got the intel. Then you put them in the tree, like visually through video. This buck did this. He came in. Here's what I did. Or maybe they're not calling. It's not all about calling. That's just a tool. But just break down how that hunt went down and how it was successful. And then the viewer can watch it and say, hey, maybe I'll try that, or maybe I should do that. Mm-hmm. It's all about education.
Yeah, that's something I've always admired about your guys' business. And I just think of the businesses that typically stand the test of time are the ones that are educating. And, I've used you guys as an example in the past where, it's the educational format is first, and then here's the tool that you use in order to, use this information in your own scenario. So I've had a lot of respect for what you guys have been doing for a long time, and appreciate you hopping on here today.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man.